And every night I used the techniques to go in and try to change my life. I said, look, I need employment, and not just some, I'm a high school dropout, and I was like, I need real money. You know what I mean? Like I need to, I'm in dire straits here. I need employment now. And I did it every single night and for like 2 weeks. And on the back end of the second week, I started seeing the future. When I'd go into that state of mind, I would kind of doze off, and I was getting clear visions of the future. And I was saying, no, I can't do this. I want to do that. And this one is, and it happened a few months later. What I'm saying is it was like I was lucid, and I chose how to get out of where I was. You know what I mean? The problem, rather than just going get a job at Burger King, like I was able to choose. I got lucid, and I went slightly into the future and got to choose it. It worked. What I'm saying is it worked.
Welcome to the Enlighten podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Enlighten podcast. As you can see, I am joined by one of the top guests of my podcast. He is responsible for 3 of my top 10 episodes. Tony, did you know that? Did you know
I didn't know that. I didn't.
All 3
Thank
of
you.
your
It's a
episodes?
huge honor.
Yeah. For those of you who are new to the podcast, Tony Rodrigues is a 20-year tour experiencer, author of the autobiography series Cavalier and its sequel project Starmaker. He hosts weekly meetups through Talks with Tony, which are focused on disclosure, consciousness expansion, and remote viewing. And he's also created a memory recall course for others of you who suspect that you may have been involved in similar programs to his 20 and back. And today, Tony's joining me for a little bit of a, you know what? I feel like this episode is going to be a choose your own adventure in many ways, because I really don't know where we're going to go with this. But on one of the episodes that you were on with me, we talked about both expressing how we feel like this life and this reality and how we live is there's a lot of truth in those choose your own adventure books.
I think so. I think that, people are plagued with bad choices all the time. I mean, let's face it. You always go and then you never know. You get intuitive things. Like there's different levels of it. I believe that you have freedom of choice and destiny.
Yes.
As well at the same time. People
Yes.
are like, nope, you have destiny. You can't do it. Your life is going to go where it's going to go, where you chose before you came in. And that's it. And then other people are like, that's not true because you have freedom of choice. You can do whatever you want. And I believe it's both.
No,
I believe it's absolutely both.
I think, in nature, we have an 80-20 rule, right? Where 80% of nature is good for you and 20% isn't. Like there's always a solution for what might harm you, and I feel like the 80-20 rule could be applied to this idea of, I think that 80% of the time we have free will and 20% of the time it's fate or destiny.
It's like you have waypoints. You have things that you're going to do. Like I'm a person that believes in reincarnation after what I went through. So people that aren't familiar with me, I hope they caught the other episodes. But in my latest,
you're in for a treat.
Or to be very confused, one or the other. My latest book, after the first book came out, series Cavalier, it did very well. And I got inundated with people with questions like, hey, what about this part of the book you didn't answer? And what about what happened here? And we left it open to possibly do a second book. It's page 252. So in Series Colony, it goes like this. I'm gonna hold it up for the camera. So it's basically at page 252, the second book happens. And it's in
Okay.
between, literally in between those two pages. This book ends and it picks up right on the 253. Like
Oh, no way.
that's how it is.
So
So
that's
Project
like,
Starmaker, yeah,
that's the meat of your sandwich.
pretty much. And well, and the reason it got left out because it's very confusing. And
Mhm.
the memories there were confusing as well. And the book actually is written to be intentionally slightly confusing. And people, there's a reveal at the end. It's a story that has an ending that people go, wait, and it makes things that you didn't think had anything to do with it at the it's a series of short stories, and at the very end there's a reveal that makes it all one story, and then you end up back on Series Colony Cavalier. So I don't talk about the ending other than leave that teaser out. Hopefully people will buy the book and read it. So, but I also, I mean, I would say it, but I don't want to ruin the experience. A lot of people have given me feedback and said, you know, the ending is amazing. I was tears of joy, and I read the whole book again. A lot of people read the book 2 or 3 times because of that, because then it makes the stuff that didn't make sense now that you know the ending.
Yeah.
But in that book is the experience of when I was in Peru in my testimony. So I'm just going to speak as if everybody knows what I'm talking about. During the time I was in Peru, I was in a Black program. I was a child. I was 11 and 12 years old, and they were drug runners, and they had put me through a trauma-based mind control program, and then an offshoot of the CIA Grill Flame program, and taught us remote viewing and I don't want to say remote influencing at this point, but remote viewing and basically channeling. And they were drugging me. They would give me an IV and they would drug me and bring me near death. And they were asking me questions at that point, and other voices were talking through me. So this was a technology. It wasn't some kind of gift. I was a normal kid that they just ran through this military grade program. And there's there's a mountain of data and paperwork around it since I researched it. What happened was on those flights, at first they drugged me and it was just like getting surgery. Like I'd go under and I'd wake up and not know what happened. But after 4 or 5 times, I began to remember what it was like on the other side. And that's basically the subject matter of the second book. But it lends to what we're talking about, the choose your own
Yes,
adventure,
it
and
does.
it's how what I'm saying. The only reason I'm prefacing is A, to promote my books. Just joking.
Well, for everyone
But
out there,
B,
yes.
to preface that I have a little bit of insight into it rather than just taking a guess. I didn't watch a YouTube and then figure out reincarnation. Like I have some insight. I experienced it. I experienced life in a different way than most people. So,
Yes.
and
And
those
for anyone who
memories.
is new to the podcast and you haven't listened to any of Tony's previous episodes, start with episode 123 and
Oh,
124. It's a 2-part series. And then I believe it's 179 is your second memory recall. And you know, you definitely were taken through a 20 and back program, living part of the time on planet Ceres while in a craft, cargo craft. And you know, you were exposed to a lot of different things that many of us down here have not been exposed to, in a sense of a lot of different kind of technologies and concepts.
I think we're starting to get exposed to them now.
Yes.
Since in the last, like, I think a lot of things are coming out now. The disclosure process is well underway, and you know, whether they tell us everything about the culture that I was up there where I worked on a UFO. I put it bluntly, I was a crew member on a UFO for an offshoot of the human species that lives on the planetoid Ceres, which is a dwarf planet in between Mars and the asteroid belt in our solar system. There was a colony there, and we did interstellar. We work alongside ETs, and they had interstellar travel. And I was just slave labor. I was a laborer. I did a cargo engineering towards the end, and that's what I did.
So from this perspective of this idea, well, why don't you share with the audience, because maybe there's some people in the audience who don't even know what a choose your own adventure book is. Like, from your perspective, what do you see those as?
So I can tell that the wheels have been turning since we talked, and you've been thinking about like having me back on the show. That this is something that I mentioned. We covered this a little bit, and it's the first thing. So I know that you've had the wheels turning on it. I feel that people we reincarnate. So we are driving the body. We're more than just our body, as Bob Monroe said. We are driving it, and we grow. Other people have told me, like there's a lot of theory that you're a being that cannot grow unless you incarnate into a 3D body. So our pain and our suffering and our accomplishments here is what forces us energetically to grow when we die. So we come into our body, we live our lifespan, we live our life cycle, and when it ends, we come out better than what we came in, basically on the same. But we grow with growth. It's like a cocoon. The life cycle is a cocoon for the energy that we really are. And so you beg to come back. You want to come back. And a short life, an 80-year life like we're at gives you a lot of versatility, right? So I believe in that. I believe there's a great deal of evidence about reincarnation. It's alongside my personal beliefs. There's a great deal of evidence about there. There's physics is starting to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out some declassified documents, top secret things do support it as well. So the other thing we talked about was time travel. And that's where this came from is I don't believe that there's an infinite number of universes that there's another infinite number of Tonys and Nicoles having a quasi show on half of them right at this moment. So I don't believe that I believe that it happens in this timeline, that there's one grand timeline and it can change. Like, in other words, think about the soul that incarnated into you and lived your years, whatever they are, from the birth until your end, and then you've done. But that still exists as there. It's a choose your own adventure. You made your choices to do the things that you did. But then somebody else could go and incarnate and be born into your same exact life, another mind, and make completely different choices and interact with everything that happened in your life in a different way and change the timeline. And that there are massive intelligences, massive consciousness that are in charge of it all, that watch the timeline. So if somebody incarnates, there's only so many choices. Like a choose your own adventure book only has a few endings.
Yes.
And you're going to end up like your destiny. They're destined, even though you can choose what happens on the next page. Like, do I go to the second page? Do I go left or right? The book takes you, but it can ultimately end up in the same exact place, depending on the author.
Yeah. Now, do you think that within these choose your own adventure books and this idea of within a timeline of you can experience multiple different realities, like depending on what you're choosing?
Yes.
So the chapters within the choose your own adventure book are like different realities with sometimes similar characters, sometimes some different characters. Right. And so with
Sometimes
this idea,
yeah, go ahead.
with this idea, do you think that, or let me just say, have you personally experienced jumping into a new reality that actually had a few different characters, similar characters, and maybe a few characters that weren't there anymore?
No, not per se. I don't think that we'd perceive it if that happened like that. That's a big thing in the truther community now, is that you're going to jump to your positive timeline. You're going to meditate, and then all of a sudden you're going to go to a timeline where it's paradise on earth because there's infinite timelines. Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't want to jump away from where I'm at, and I want to own up to what I am. And it just seems like it's an easy way to blame people, like, oh, well, guess what? You didn't jump to the right timeline, so now you got to suffer. It seems like an excuse to abuse
Oh, I
people.
see what you're saying. So for me, that's a perspective on the actual timeline itself. So the way I've seen it is, if I'm experiencing a different, because I feel like I've experienced a different timeline literally this year already, after an ayahuasca ceremony. And the reason is because certain things just dramatically shifted in how they were showing up in my life. It's like new programs were reinstalled, old ones were taken out. And it's almost like I feel like I'm in a foreign city. And I love the city. The city's beautiful. I just don't know fully how to speak the language. And I don't know all the directions just yet because I'm not really sure how to interact with this new culture. And it's not fully like a brand new city, but it's kind of got hints of that energy behind it. But I don't necessarily think like, you know how people's like, oh, I'm going to jump to this timeline because I did all the work and I'm better than you kind of a mentality. I don't see it like that. I see it more as in, you're likely going to show up in my reality just in a different form potentially, that's going to match that energy that I've created like in this reality. But I think when we look at this idea of jumping to a higher timeline, that's where we get screwed because we think linearly and it's not linearly.
We are not built to think about time travel at all. The human mind we can't do it. I say it all the time. It's like a fish thinking about what happens at high altitude. They have no idea. They have no way to comprehend the dynamics up there. It's just not possible. And humans are the same way. I don't think, even if we know a lot about time travel, it's like we just don't have that mentality. One thing that I would say about what you're saying is, I think a lot of things are underestimated. Number one is our place in the universe. We're told what we are incorrectly. So we think we're the top of the food chain. We are not. There are ETs. There are advanced intelligent species all over the place that are radically more advanced mentally, spiritually, and physically, the whole thing. So we're kind of in the middle of the road as far as intelligence goes. And so we're trying to sort out, but we're lied to about our existence, our place in. The other thing is how powerful your perspective is on your own reality. So how many times have you seen somebody manifest just horrible things coming to themselves because of their horrible attitude? It's like you take somebody that's going to go in and play a baseball game and they go, man, I'm just strike out all the time. They're manifesting and changing their reality to be a horrible game that they're going to go into. And then other people have this mindset where, they're going to go in, I'm going to do well. This is mine. I'm going to win. And they believe it and they do. So we are very powerful. When that experiment, the scientific experiment where the quantum particles, when the observer looks at a solid object and the particles in it behave differently than when somebody was not looking at it, shows how powerful. And that's just at a glance. Think about what you're believing. Think about you're on a spiritual level. Think about like you said, the power of an ayahuasca experience where your entire being is focused on what's going on. And there's a lot of evidence that we communicate while we're sleeping. So we are a transmitter, and while we're asleep in the theta state, we're talking to other people and we're changing things in the timeline at that point. That's when we're changing. You wake up and you go, I feel good. I don't know why. I can't remember that dream, but it was really awesome. I don't know why. And then a few weeks later, something awesome happens to you. That's kind of how it works. You're securing permission when we sleep, when we're in a theta state. We are not inside time space. We're on Dan Winter calls it the array. The CIA called it the absolute infinity, where you can access it in a state of mind. And when you have really, really spiky brainwaves, really up and down brainwaves. So we're very powerful in changing our own timeline. Mm-hmm. So you're changing your mind can change, that might be you changing the city or your perspective of it, because we're all in it too. I was on a show and and I hate to say this and bring this up, Nicole, I'm so sorry. I was on a show and a guy was like kind of a flat earth proponent. And I said, you know what I mean? I was like, you had me on your show and I worked on a UFO and I went to space and I saw the Earth from the sky and all the planets are round and it's like space is real. And but he was also sold on the simulation theory. So if I believe, so what they're saying now, because of enough people, the flat Earth stuff has kind of ran through the audience that they can fool. And they're running dry of people that they can fool easily. And now they're coming up against people that are smarter. So they're pivoting and saying, well, it's flat Earth simulation. It's simulation theory. And if I believe that it's flat, then it's flat. And if you believe that it's round, then it's round. And we just live together. And I said, that doesn't work either, because if you're on a boat, if you and Nicole, if you and I are on a boat out at sea and I believe it's shallow water and you believe it's deep water, It's neither. It's whatever the C is at the time, because it exists.
Yes.
It doesn't care about it. We're not that
There is a
omnipotent.
place for facts.
Yeah. Right. So, and albeit, and the thing is, a lot of the people that gravitate, I'm not going to take this kind of like snobby attitude towards people that are falling for this, because we've been lied to so much. Everybody
Yeah.
knows that the facts have been skewed, and they continue to be skewed worse by the day, by the media, etc. I won't go on a whole tangent right there.
No, I know. And that's like, that's one of the problems with a lot of the different conspiracy theories out there, is that a lot of them are planted and meant to send you on a wild goose chase and completely really screw up your whole concept of reality in general.
Dissipate the facts and to dissipate the people that are on the same page. They dilute it. They don't want to change. They know that they can't change the facts, but they dilute them so that it's not much there. My prime one for that is the Twin Towers, where they say, everybody comes out with the conspiracy and the facts about the towers being down, and they say, well, it was Project Blue Man. They weren't even planes. And I'm like, what good does it do if that was the case? You're only diluting. Number one, that's kind of unbelievable. Number two, so what if it was? That doesn't change anything. And they go, no, but it wasn't even a plane. They want to fight about it. It's a disinfo campaign.
Yeah.
It's to make you fight about the fact that there was a plane or not a plane versus who was behind it and who collected the money.
You from the real issue at hand.
Yes.
Yes.
And so a lot of that is going on in the truther community as we're starting to discover like these advanced technologies that exist. Like, I wouldn't speak publicly. I wouldn't have got my 2 books out, and I wouldn't have stuck with this for the last 7 years if I didn't have evidence behind my testimony to support it. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of evidence behind similar testimonies and the infrastructure. There's people coming forward with just talking about the infrastructure of the secret space program. I hate even calling it that even anymore. It's kind of old. It's kind of old, stale. It's stale. So stale. But these are Black programs that exist, and they're going on have strong. And we are, as a species, we have joined the intergalactic community, and we are doing business out there, and we are being kept in the dark. And we are funding it. And we're the financiers of it all. So this is something that's going to change. And I don't want to say that it's a bad guy or a good guy. I think there's selfish people that are running it, and they're trying, maybe in their own way, trying their best. But a lot of people have been victimized. There's been a lot of crimes against humanity because of this technology. Because of all technology, sooner or later, it leads people use them for the wrong thing. And we're coming out of it. We're getting disclosure. They told us about the UAPs, and it's going fast. It's ramping up. We expect to have some big disclosures in the next year or so. So I don't know how I'm going to get back to your choose your own adventure question. So you called this out when you introduced me, that who knows where we're going with this.
I know we're going to go everywhere. We're going to go everywhere, but
it's all tied together.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because even just from this idea of, on my ayahuasca journey in May, I exited the matrix. I went through a wormhole. Tony. I was like, this, like, what is this I'm in? And then I just saw all these like flashing lights going past me, and then like all these lit up hieroglyph symbols and like ancient faces that were lit up in like paints and stuff, and just flying past me. And then it was like strobe lights. And then I'm like, where am I going? And I kind of ended up in like what felt like an AI reality. And in this, and I don't want to get too much into detail because I know my audience has already heard it, but for your sake, basically I saw my on a conveyor belt coming out of a wall, a plexiglass with my side profile in it, like about like that thick, coming out on the conveyor belt. And then I got scanned, and I'm like, oh, why am I getting scanned? And basically I then hear a voice like, Nicole, we've been waiting for you for a while for this to happen. We were able to pull you out of the matrix, so to speak, through the slipstream of consciousness that was created through my ayahuasca journey. And from this conversation, which I also want to mention to you, where I was, I don't even know where I was. All I remember is the building I was in was all round, and it was all the walls were circular. All the walls were circular, but I was taken into the vault of my own programs. And I was just kind of like left to my own devices there. So I'm like, well, I'm sitting there literally just thinking to myself, if I'm outside of the program and I'm in the vault of my programs, and that means I can start changing my programs that I don't want anymore. And that's when I decided to literally, it's almost like I was pulling like 8 tracks or something like out of my, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I was pulling them out and then I was installing the ones that I wanted, which were the exact opposite. And long story short, every single one of those programs is now active in my life. And it's only been a few months.
Your life changed according to what you saw in that trip.
Yes. And I know that a lot of it has to do with my belief. And I believe so much that I was there and that it was happening on some level, like that happened, which helped deepen the neural pathways for me to continue creating this reality.
Wow. So that's amazing. But it seems like, God, where do I start with this? I'm trying to lead into this. But it seems like, okay, I believe that before you're born, you get this experience. You go to that place and they kind of give you your choices. Do you want to do this? No. Do you want to do that? No. Yes. That's.
So are you saying I went to my pre-birth place where all souls go to when they're designing?
Post-birth, during your life, it's a place that like there are different, like,
it's like the soul design hub,
states of mind, and you eventually flow back to that place to where you're actually, your consciousness is in charge. So in higher focus states, the Monroe Institute and the CIA use this in the Gateway document. They describe being dead. I think being awake is focus 1, and being drowsy is focus 2, and pre-sleep is focus 4, and 5 and 6 I think is sleep. Focus 10 is lucid dreaming. Focus 22 or 24 is death. Focus 40 is loss of loss of your individuality to a larger super consciousness. So basically, we're all one consciousness. At that point, you forget that you're even an individual. The focus 40 or somewhere up there, and there's a super conscious, and then you actually come back from that. So that's kind of the process through the CIA research and the Monroe Institute, there's a lot of good science and a lot of practice for out-of-body experiences and getting information in those state of mind. What I'm saying is, beyond that super consciousness, at some point, there's a consciousness that says, look, they get to you and they go, wow, your last life was this. Well, you need to live this life now. You need to go and do this now on your way back in, on your way back down.
Almost like a soul advisor.
Exactly. A counselor, a soul counselor. Like, these are beings that live outside of time space. Like, we were aware of them. So the Ceres Colony Corp had the ability to travel time, and they began to aggressively try to tip it in their favor, and they got punished by these beings that live outside of time space. Came and instantly punished them, and they said they have laws. That's why people with time travel don't go back and change it. They can't. We're not the only sheriff in town. So what I'm saying is, at that time, I remember that. So that's kind of the basis of my book. I would almost guess that you read the book.
I've read most of your series of your series.
But I'm seeing Starmaker, the second one. So it's literally the subject matter of the second book.
Oh.
So really, there's a great deal of the second book.
My higher self knew.
Wow. So we're talking about what I experienced, literally.
Okay.
But there is a point where there are, and other people, it's like the verbiage can change, whatever, it doesn't matter. They can be your guide or it's you. It could be you, whatever it is. There are higher beings that live outside of time space that come and point you on the path, because ultimately you want growth. You want to keep growing, and you want to reincarnate so that you can do that. And they look at you and go, your life did this and this and this. You have to go in there. There are certain, and this is the difference we said earlier. There's a destiny and there are choices. So imagine if you're sitting down with a counselor and they're like, and you're just in her balls of energy and you're talking about what's going to happen. Do you want to be a boy or a girl? You have to be a parent. You have to have kids. In this lifetime, you have to have kids. And the next one, you don't have to. But this one, you have to, because you didn't last time or whatever, however that works. I'm just giving,
Yeah.
I'm making
We're
me
just,
hypothetical.
yes, of course.
And you go, well, I kind of liked being a guy. That's what I'm going to say next time. I already know it. I liked being a guy. I was just getting good at it. So I'm going to be a guy again. They go, well, you have to have kids. Do you want them when you're younger or older? And you're going to be able to perturb the choices at that point. Do you see what I'm saying? You're going to say, well, I tell you what, I don't want to have kids if I'm going to live somewhere where they're all constantly in danger. So that's out. That whole living in the jungle thing is out. I'm not doing that. And so you get what I'm saying? Like, it's what you say no to. And I've been asked from people in this spiritual community when they read my book, like, how could you live through the things you did? And it sounds so terrible. And I think that in that time, conversation with my counselor, my guide or whatever, that I was just trying to cram it all into one life fast to pay back karmic debts, or to get it over with, so that when, like, you do the hard part first so that in your next time it's easier. Like,
Well, a 20
your
and
work
back
day.
kind of allows you to cram more into the life than others.
And I crammed a lot of abuse,
Yes.
because trauma actually does spur growth. So I'm a big fan of Osho, the old guru Osho. He's really
Yes.
got a really good love advice, etc. But he said, suffering is part of it. So you can't experience, and it's true, people that have not suffered in their life have really bad attitudes towards their blessings, towards, you know what I'm saying? Like, the people that are always complaining, that have a lot, that are always complaining, it's I look at them and think, you probably never had really any real suffering, so that you're actually craving suffering. That's why everything bothers you.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
you're
this
right.
pizza's cold. I can't stand it.
I
Take this back. You know what I'm saying? And you take somebody that's genuinely suffered and they go, I don't care if it's cold. This pizza's delicious. I'm so happy.
Well,
Like,
you can even see that just in our different worlds. Like, if you look at like first world problems versus third world problems.
exactly.
Okay. And then you look at the attitudes of the people in the first world versus the attitudes of people in third world. And you see people a lot happier, with a lot less,
That's right.
and it's because of the contrast. But it's also like, if you don't have things going on in your life, you look to create problems that really aren't problems.
Exactly. So happiness, I mean, there's a real correlation between achievement and happiness. So people that are living basically in a third world situation, they get up and hike and get water and then boil it. And they spend 2 hours out of their day just with the water. And so they feel accomplished what I'm saying? Every single day they're getting water and they're doing this. And at the end of the day, they go, man, this water's good. Look at this. I got this. It was my turn today. Look at this. Have some water. And so that is a source of happiness for them. But for us in America, for the most people, I pray that you have great water and you just turn on the spigot. It's not an issue. Water is not an accomplishment. You get it. You don't get any kind of serotonin from brushing your teeth in the morning because the water has already been sorted out.
And this is why we need discipline in our lives, because there literally is a dopamine rush. There is dopamine released when you continuously achieve something. That's why discipline allows you to achieve something. And then you get that sense, like you said, of accomplishment, which is very highly correlated to happiness.
Yeah. And people that are unhappy tend to not be doing much.
Mm-hmm.
But back, and then, so look, so this is life stuff. Look, we all know this. The listeners know this. You guys see this in your own life, I'm sure. But now think about it on an incarnating schedule. Now to say, are you going to incarnate and go through a bunch of stuff that's going to lower the bar for your happiness to make you be happy easily? Or do you want to take it easy this time? Like, I literally think it like this. Is some people, it really appears to me like some people, and this is not a slam. Believe me, I'm not trying to criticize anybody that's alive, but it appears to me that, number one, we all know life isn't fair, but some people are playing the game of life on an easier setting than others. Some people have a very difficult life right out of the gate, and it's difficult, and they escape it and overcome it. And some people have a very, I don't want to say easy, but they have an easy go of it. They have things are easy, and they can't understand why other people do things. They can't understand the decisions behind other people that are really struggling. Why don't you just do that? Why are you doing that? Why don't you just save your money up and buy something? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's got a way around it. And then the people that are having very difficult go, I don't understand how you can go, it's a different reality experience. Like you were saying, like your reality shifted. It's a different timeline for two people in the same exact room, based on their life choice, on their life difficulty setting.
Well, yeah, but even what I've noticed is certain people in my life, they're very different. Like they match the program that I pulled out and then reinstalled. So it's like
you changed. You went in and physically in the midlife, hopefully lower end of your life. I'm not going to speculate on the
46.
ladies.
I'm pretty close.
I'm not going to talk to ladies.
I really feel
ladies age. I don't do it.
I really feel though, like 120 to 150. I'm trying to, I feel like I'm not there yet. I'm still in the third quarter, the second quarter.
Well, okay. Just figure of speech. We'll call it midlife.
Yeah.
Lower first half of life. Yeah. That you changed. You had the opportunity to go in, and that's why these things are very powerful. An ayahuasca trip is something not to do willy-nilly. Yeah, not to do it willy-nilly. Like some people are like, oh, I did it 700 times. Or, there's people that do ayahuasca every other day, it seems. And it's like, it's not working at that point. This is something to do. Yeah, and I honestly think hypnosis, hypnoregression, hypnotherapy is the same, should be taken very seriously and should not be done super often. These are things that you want to look at your life. Where are you at in your life? And do you want to change anything? Number one. And number two, what are you going to do for the better? Like, what is your calling? I think a lot of people have no idea what their purpose is in life. They're just kind of cruising. And I feel like I'm speaking like I'm some kind of guru myself, and I'm not. And I'm just an observer and worrying about my own self. And I have to ask myself, after what I've been through, after I began to speak publicly about my testimony, my life changed greatly. And so there's several times when I had to stop and go, what is my purpose with this? Because it's not what I started out to be. I was a normal dad, like I was a normal run-of-the-mill guy, and then got my memories back in 2015. And now it's like, I'm a witness to something that's very prevalent, very important. Like whistleblowers in the ufology and in the SSP community are kind of like still regarded, not taken seriously, still kind of a sideshow. But really what we're telling you is the most important facts in the history of all of mankind, that, the ETs are here working alongside of us, and they're on the way, and we're going to get a disclosure, and it's going to go from 0 to being able to go to other planets really quick. And we're going to see things that we cannot imagine. And we've been lied to, not for the last 50 or 100 years, but for the whole time. Everything's been a lie by the people that have been in charge. And so we're going to have to undo that. We're going to have to unlearn what we believe generationally. And so we're seeing it now. We're seeing everything unravel now, like in the nut house that is the world in the last few years. It's been nutty. But they're undoing programming. First and foremost, there's a lot of programming that's being undone. And whatever, I forget where we started with that. We're talking about your ayahuasca and how you changed.
Well, let me ask you this. Literally, your 20 and back was one chapter in a choose your own adventure book, so to speak.
True.
But
True.
You are also in another chapter with still memories of that other chapter.
Right. So they took me, and I lived for a period of 20 years, and then they put me back in the same night. It was all in one night. It's mind blowing to think about it. And then they erased. I wasn't supposed to remember it. And then later on, 35 years later or so, I got all the memories back in one night. And bang, like I had bleed through flashes of memory, but when they all came back, and it
which
changed,
you have to believe was designed. Like you likely, no one can say for sure, but the
timing is suspect.
Yeah.
So the timing of it all was very suspect. I got my memories back at the same time that they were discovering ceres. So not discovering, but like they sent a probe. NASA sent a probe to Ceres, to the planetoid that I was on. And it was just getting there a few months after I got my memories back. So I got my memories back, and then I looked up Ceres, and I was like, oh, by the way, there's a probe almost there. So the timing was really weird how that worked out. I also got an MRI scan the week before I got my memories back of my head. And there are other whistleblowers that said the same thing. They got an MRI scan and then got their memories back of living on Mars, working on Mars.
So do you
that
think
was
something in the MRI scan activates your memories?
Yeah, like maybe there was some kind of implant or something in there, like a active block that got damaged, in that process, because the MRI is very powerful.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research into that. It may be a coincidence. It might not be the main reason, but it was at the same time. And like I said, I think it was Michael Ralph from the Mars Records did that. There were two guys in the Mars Records that remembered living on Mars in a 20 and back, and in the 90s. And one of them had an MRI. The other one did kinesiology and figured it out. I don't know how the details of it, but that happened. And so the freaky part is that I remembered living in Peru and living in Seattle and living in California during those 20, for the first part, six to eight of those 20 years. I lived, both of me on the world, like two of me.
Mm-hmm.
And they had places that I'd never been. So there were places that I'd never been. So I got on Google Earth and looked, and then there they are. Recently, since you and I have talked, I found the airplane.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So I did an interview that was being shown in Latin America, like in Spanish. And two guys wanted to meet me. They saw the interview, and they said, we want to meet Tony and talk to him. They were ufology guy. One guy was in a famous, he was a jet fighter pilot for the Peruvian Air Force back in the 80s, and he got into an air-to-air engagement. It's famous in ufology in the Latino world. Pretty famous pilot. And then his buddy, they were both Peruvian Air Force pilots. So we did a Zoom call, and we're talking, and they were like, where were you at? And I said, in the Madre de Dios. I was in Puerto Tawantinsuyo. And they were like, I don't really know that place. He said, Puerto Maldonado. And Maldonado's the next big town over in the jungle. We're talking about the Amazon jungle. And the next one up the river, the big city, is Puerto Maldonado. And he goes, yeah, I was there for the Narcos. We raided that area. The one pilot in 1990 was in the war on drugs. And they would go into towns that were, because that's what I was doing. I was on a plane, a C-46 Commando, which I remember, and I said in like 2017.
Yeah.
And doing shipments of cocaine paste from Puerto Tawantinsuyo to Santa Marta. Anyhow, he goes, yeah, that was in 1990. And I said, do you know about a C-46 Commando? Because for years, I had been looking for all of the logs to try to prove my account. So I said, I remember the plane. It was a distinct plane with a long-range variant, and I remembered it very good. And the word commando stuck out. That was like very clear in my memories in 2015. So he goes, just casually, he goes, oh yeah, that's in Pucallpa. They confiscated the Commando. They got a C-46 Commando, and they're in Spanish talking. I went, wait a minute, what? And he goes, yeah, it's in Pucallpa. So then right in the Zoom call, I shrunk it down, opened up Google, and went to the town called Pucallpa. And anybody can do this on Google Earth. And on the main airport, at the bottom of the airport, there's like 3 or 4 planes parked there, and lo and behold, it's the top one. I passed the hat, and a guy flew there 2 weeks later and got pictures of it, and it's the exact same plane. It's the plane that I was on.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Like things like that. Things like that I wish wouldn't happen. I almost sometimes wish that I would get proven wrong.
Yeah, because it just makes it hard.
Life would be easier if all the stuff all this crazy stuff that's in my book that I'm saying wasn't true, and I got proved out of it. Then, you know what I mean? I could just go, well, whatever. I'll get some counseling and go back to work and just go back. I'll go get a golf membership somewhere and get back to life. But it's not like that. It's like, everything keeps panning out. This was only like 6 months ago that this happened. Okay. So, I have pictures of it and everything. It's in my slide presentation when I do live talks.
Wow.
And so that's real. What I'm saying is all those memories that, like, I was fortunate. A lot of people, thousands of people have reached out to me saying they've been through the same thing, but most people get taken straight into space. They don't get time on Earth to get their memories to, like I did, to have landmarks and things that I remember.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think there's an opportunity for people once they make a choice and it kind of goes in a certain direction, and you're like, oh, I don't like this. Can I?
Absolutely.
So you can change the outcome.
So you are destined for like I said, there's waypoints. Yeah. There's obvious waypoint. So here's the big reveal. Okay, I got to answer this in 2 parts. Okay. Because this is big, it's hard to wrap your head around. I know.
You know?
You take it easy on me, Nicole. I'll answer this in two parts. Firstly, yes. So I do something. There's a class. So I have a Talks with Tony show. I did a Patreon show, and it morphed into really I do a show once every couple weeks or 3 weeks, and post that for Patreon. And I got behind a paywall so that I wouldn't get deleted. I got a lot of my stuff deleted. But it turned into I teach remote viewing now from what I remembered from then, and I dug up CIA documents and relearned it. And it's fun. It's so fun. We do like envelopes, and it's a blind target, and then people describe it, and we open an envelope, and people are accurate. We beat the probability every single time. But the advanced class is remote influencing.
Okay.
What happened to me was I had 3 kids. I'm going through a divorce right now, but my kids are growing up. My youngest is going to college. My 3 kids, we had moved state. We had a 6-month lease on a house. We had 1 car between us, 3 dogs. And I was working remotely for a company, and we found the owner dead. He passed away, bless his soul, in his apartment. He expired. He had a heart attack or something like toxicology, like a medicine problem. So I lost the company ran for a couple weeks without anybody at the helm, but we couldn't access money to pay people. We did our best. And so I lost my job, and I had like 2 months left on my lease. And so I was like, couldn't find a job. I didn't have wheels, nothing. I was like in a dire straits. This was in 2017.
Okay.
And at the same time, I was researching the remote reviewing and the remote influencing that I remembered going through and I was finding the declassified information on the CIA website and cross-referencing it with what I remembered personally from when I
Okay.
was in that program.
Mhm.
And I thought, wow, there's stuff they left out that I remember we did. And I kind of filled in the blanks. And at that point, I went in and I practiced it. And every night I used the techniques to go in and try to change my life. I said, look, I need employment, and not just some, I'm a high school dropout. And I was like, I need real money. You know what I mean? Like I'm in dire straits here. I need employment now. And I did it every single night and for like 2 weeks. And on the back end of the second week, I started seeing the future. When I'd go into that state of mind, I would kind of doze off, and I was getting clear visions of the future. And I was saying, no, I can't do this. I want to do that. And and it happened a few months later. What I'm saying is it was like I was lucid, and I chose how to get out of where I was. You know what I mean? The problem, rather than just going get a job at Burger King, like I was able to choose. I got lucid, and I went slightly into the future and got to choose it. It worked. What I'm saying is it worked. And I started talking about it on my show, and we started a group. We do that. It's remote influencing. So that is part one. So there is a technique. The CIA was doing it. I want you to know that they spent 20 or almost 30, better part of $30 million on the project over 20 years. And at the end, they figured out that they could do multiple people on the same target, and they were healing soldiers at Fort Meade. And the doctors didn't know that the soldier was under remote influencing attacks, either to heal them or to make them worse. But the doctor would do a report every day, and then they could look at the data. So they were making guys swell. The guys with a broken leg, they were making it worse, or they would make them get better.
So this is kind of like the idea of like quantum entanglement, and this idea of, okay, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound?
Well, it's kind of like, so
that's not what I meant to say. That's not
the science. That's because some of the science is behind that, but
yeah,
no,
but it's also like
quantum holograph theory.
Yeah, like you can literally influence something by your energy being present with it.
Yes. And it's in a public gateway, a declassified document now. The gateway document, CIA gateway document. You can Google that and get a PDF. And I think page 25 or so gets really good.
Okay.
So it was based on that. I run tier 3, and we have a purple series. It's like a teachable that tells how to do it. So my background's purple. So there's a long story behind that. So that's one. So what I'm saying is you can influence your life. So you can change. You can use this technique, a meditative technique, to influence the future of your life.
So you saw your life going down one trajectory because of the loss of this guy's life and the business tanking and all that. And you were able to go into the future to direct it onto a different path.
And I said, no, that's not going to work. say, yep, no, that's not acceptable. I want to go this one. And I saw like three
Okay,
or
so
four
okay,
different versions, and I said this one. And that's
okay,
what
okay.
happened. And it
Let's
was
pause.
random the way it played out.
Let's pause there for a second, because that's important, because that relates to my ayahuasca journey and my matrix, where I was like, well, I don't want this program anymore. I'm going to put this program in.
Bingo.
And it was very specific. Like I was like, I am done with this one.
Right. Well, so yes, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. So during your ayahuasca, you might have been in the same exact place that I was able to get after 2 weeks of meditating a couple hours every single night with binaurals, and I was doing monoatomic. I was doing a lot of other things, you know, like I went in deep because I was out of desperation. So maybe ayahuasca is just far more, it's a one-timer, you know.
You know, now that you're saying this, part of my visions before I installed the program, I remember seeing a future vision with each program.
Wow.
Like it's
Wow.
like I tapped into a certain vision and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. And I install that's interesting.
So, and it was weird. It was abstract. So the other thing is, if you're not using a binaural at that point, well, we'll talk later. It's like now I'm thinking all these great ideas. You're not using a binaural when you go into that state, when you go outside of, so it's quantum holograph theory, basically. And you're going outside of it, which is the CIA called it the infinite, the absolute infinite. And Dan Willis, somebody that's done a lot of science in it, or excuse me, Dan Winter, done a lot, calls it the array. So once you leave the 3D, the time space, we're locked in time. You got to wake up this morning, go to bed tonight. Once you leave that and you access it, you're outside of time space. And you can go into the future and past. And that basically is all of psychic phenomenon. It's explained, you know, your consciousness has great weight in that place. But it was abstract because I used binaurals. When I was seeing the future, I was seeing like aspects of the room. That's how I knew I was back. The one place I got a job, and I saw the floor in it clearly. The lights, it was like an office space, and it had a floor. And I remember when I stood there, I said, "This is it. This is the one I want." In whenever let's say it was December, I was going into the future. And I said, "This is it." And I would go to other ones and go, "This isn't going to work. I can't go here. Nope." And I remember it was abstract. Like, you know how dreams are, where you go, "Yeah, I remember it, but I don't remember it." But I remember seeing the floor and the lighting, and kind of the room was like weird. And then later when I walked in there, you know what I mean? I walked in for the job interview 3 months later. I went, "Oh, here it is." I went, wow, it's exactly the place. I went, wow. And they were like, "Are you okay, buddy?" You know, like when I walked in, like, I was like, and I was super confident. They were, you know, like, "Hold on, we haven't hired you yet." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm going to be working here." You know, I said that's how I was. I was like, "No, this is me. It's me." So just so you know, I'm the new guy. And because I had seen it, because I had been through that experience. So that was the first half of my answer to your question.
Okay, hold on. We got to pause there for a second. Hold on. I know,
Like
because
10
there's so
minutes.
much here. There's so much here. So when you saw there, you know, you're like, that's the new outcome that I want. That's where I want this to go. Was there anything that that you remember shifted after around that 2 week? Did you have to keep doing things that after that 2 week period?
No. So after that, when I really got the clear visions so like I said, it was about 2 weeks. It was really like Monday through Friday of the 1 week, going really seriously every single night. I was like totally panicked, and I played it off well to my family. They didn't know that I was like, that we were on the brink of ruin, and because we had just moved too.
Okay.
But on the second week, it was like a Wednesday or Thursday that happened, and after that, I naturally just I said, "Nope, I don't need to do it tonight." There was a feeling of like I solved it.
It was
Like there
done.
was there was a feeling I was on this trajectory, and then I did that, and then I saw that vision, that clear vision, and I went, "Oh, I solved it." So it's cool. And then I quit, and it took time for it to play out. I want to say this: what I found in all of my research and in all of the practices, we do this with most people. When you ask them, "What would you change about your future?" Everybody's like healing. Like 9 out of 10 people, it's a healing target. What would you do? Nobody wants to manifest money. They think it's evil. And it's not evil. Money is survival. You have to
Yep.
manifest
It's
your
an
survival.
energy. It's just energy.
Yeah, it's energy. Exactly. It's a form of energy.
Mhm.
So, but nobody does that. It's all healing. But what I found is that if you try to do it too quickly, there's side effects. So, in other words, if I say, look, I need $1 million by Friday from zero. So it's like you're going to have your $1 million, but you're going to have a heart attack. You're going to have something. You're going to get in a car crash. There's the universe, the hologram will push back. And so I said it like this. This is exactly how it is, and how we do it the way we teach it in tier 3 in my Patreon and Talks with Tony. It's like a hand moving through the water. So the desired result is me to get my hand, the wave in front of my hand is what I need. But if you do it fast, there's a big weight, there's a big hole behind it, and all
Yes.
that turbulence, and then it splashes back on you. There's a repercussion. Put it
Okay.
that way. So you put a hand through the water, it splashes, messy. But if you put your hand in the water and you move it slowly and
You
say,
glide
I
it.
don't need the $1 million next week. I need $1 million when it's convenient, universe. And you move your hand slowly, then you don't get those repercussions either. The water stays calm behind your intention that you're trying to do.
So this is one of the reasons why we ask for when we're doing like kind of upgrades or anything like that within your own meditation or whatever you're doing, like trying to heal something, and you're asking your body to catch up, but do it with ease and grace. Whatever work is being done on me, may it be done with ease and grace. And so that it's not like, oh, I want to be healed tomorrow, but within reason, like, you're like, listen, I need this to happen. Just don't leave me hanging high and dry on the street. Like, but whatever it's going to come through, I trust that it's going to come through and it's going to be right.
I did it super fast because I was desperate, and I started getting really bad heart palpitations, and I went to the doc so bad, so much so like when I started that new, when it forked, actually on the day that it changed, I started having really bad heart problems. Like I was having energy problems, and I went to the doctor, and they did they EK'd everything. They couldn't find anything. And I said, look, my heart is freaking out. It's tripping out. I was like, seriously, like I was having like where it would beat. And it was a repercussion of the change, because soon after that change, 6 months later, it all went away. And I had adapted to the new timeline, to the new lifestyle, to the whatever you want to call it. A timeline is a misnomer, I think. That was a little bit kind of too much to call it, but well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
That
The
being
new reality,
said,
the new reality.
yes, my new situation.
Yeah.
So that being said, like you can change things like that all you want, but you're not going to stop yourself from dying.
Let me ask you this. Did you, because of the kickback, did you feel like the heart rate was part of the splashback? Like,
Absolutely. It
okay.
absolutely was. It was an unnatural thing. It was
Okay.
weird. And it was tied to that. It was tied to that period of time when the big change happened. Like when my life went around that corner, that's what happened. And it
Okay.
lasted.
Now, before we get into the second part, I just want to, because I want to drive this home so that the audience understands the power behind this. The fact that you knew in that moment, it's done. And you came out of, you knew, like, there's no need to keep doing it. There's a certain power behind when it comes to creating a reality, in that you have so much faith and so much trust in the work that you've done, that if you were to continue doing it, it's almost like it dilutes the power and the potency of your own creation.
You could undo it.
You could undo it. Exactly. You could undo it.
What's the word? It's like stacking rocks that are wobbly, and the more you play with it, the more the chance of them falling over. Whereas just leave it, you know what I mean? It's ready to go. It's good to go.
And that comes from, part of that is the belief.
Well, and then so also so that's part of the technique as well, is envisioning the future as if it's already happened.
Yes.
So that state of mind is actually key in the technique.
Which is what like Joe Dispenza teaches a lot of that.
The CIA did it, it was like it's from the 70s. Like there's a lot, I have some books here, but they were onto this back in the 60s and 70s. And the research, I don't want to name Stanford Research Institute, but research institutes like them. I think there was another one. that were into this. They were studying this, and this is real stuff. Now it's classified. What happened was the CIA got to the point, like I said, they were healing soldiers, and they would get, I don't know how many people, more than one. They discovered that they were getting measurable influences with one person, trying to influence a wounded soldier in the hospital at Fort Meade. And then they said, well, let's do two guys on it and see if there's and they got, after a while, they got a room full of soldiers that were trained at this, probably on minerals and maybe some drugs. And they were actually, it got to the point, it's rumored that they killed somebody remotely, that they could stop someone's heart. And then the camp program goes canceled. Nothing to see here. We canceled. It doesn't work. Go away. And that was when it got canceled, like right around late 80s or 90s, when Gateway got canceled. But it was right at the same time that they figured out that they could have more than one person on the same target, and it would have a faster result, a better result. So that's the thing. So if you, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to think of one off the top of my head. Let's say this. Let's say that you have a pet poodle or a pet chihuahua, your pet chihuahua, and she fell or she has a condition, medical condition. The doctor doesn't know what's wrong with her, but she's like constantly in pain. It's obvious. And then so you go, well, I'm going to use this technique and heal her. And you're doing it. And she go, wow, she is getting around better, but she's not all the way done. You know, and you got to do it every day for all the time, for a long time, over a period of time. If you did that, you will get a measurable result. But let's say this is, you have a group of people, 20 people that are all adept and very good at practicing meditating and going into a focused 10 to focus 12, basically lucid dreaming, being able to induce lucid dreaming with the intention of seeking out your puppy and breathing the color blue into it to heal it, purple and blue, and changing its vibe basically from the wounded red. It will heal quickly, and there won't be that big splashback. So that's how that works. That I just splashed something. I just told some people. I just had a spill. So
I kind of gathered that might have been what just happened.
Yeah. Like, while I'm talking about it, so maybe that's the universe saying, "Shut up, man! Don't tell everybody how to do this." But that's kind of how it works.
That, or maybe it's like, just slow down a little bit. Like,
yeah, that's kind of how it works, though.
Okay. So the belief is the second part of it.
Believing as it already happened. So you would go in and envision the puppy, and after, in the beginning, you're envisioning, you're fixing it, you're going in and visiting it. You just want to go lucid and visit the puppy, and then surround it with the color blue. The gateway results were that the color blue would lower swelling. So they would go and pretend that they were breathing blue. All these soldiers would go to a soldier in the hospital and surround it with breathe blue energy on it. And he would be wounded. And the next morning, the doctor would be like, wow, he's recovered way faster. This was measurable. And when they did red, they were actually perturbing.
So this is why then, when I do inner child work, whether it's just with myself or with my clients, and I take them through reconnecting to their inner child, and then I guide them back into time to a trauma point, because if it can work to go to the future, it can work obviously to go in the past. And
there's no difference.
Yeah, there's no difference. So taking them back to that trauma point and changing, basically healing it, and empowering the individual so that they're no longer stuck in the looping subconscious patterns that are not allowing them to create the reality that their conscious mind really wants right now. So what I've noticed is it literally creates a ripple effect into your present moment, so that your present moment literally starts to change.
Yes, exactly. And that's, like I said, maybe that was that experience where I said, no, I'm done. I did this, and it worked.
Yes.
So just the second point, and I'll try to be quick about this, was, so you can change things like that, but there are major things that are going to happen in your life that you cannot change.
Yes.
So you can't change. So you might, it might be and I hate using death because it's so sad to talk about to people. Everybody's got somebody they've lost, and it's a horrible thing. But death is inevitable. And so if I was gonna die on a Wednesday and I saw it coming and I used this technique and I said, I don't want to die. I don't want to die then. I might make it till Friday you might push me back, but
Well,
the
here's something
universe has,
interesting, Tony.
there
So
are some important things.
I had a guest on the show a little over a year ago. I think it was a year last May. And her name is Jeanette Biro, and she had an NDE. Okay. And she was taken into the room and saw her whole entire soul blueprint. And she saw where she was, and she saw that we have multiple exit points. And depending on what we
Yes.
choose, she was eventually there's a final exit point.
Yeah.
But like, so what you there's you can't, like, at some point you have to exit. And
Right.
so, but you actually do have a choice of when you want to exit.
And there are also other things like a death that work like that as well. So you're going to have relationships with people for certain things, for certain outcomes. It doesn't have to be what do you call it, romantic, but
Yep.
other relationships you could have. You're going to have a bully, right? You're going to have somebody that you don't like that comes into your life that is in a position that you can't avoid, that you have to deal with. And you can, in the same way, like you said, multiple exits, you'll have multiple bully. It'll keep happening until you solve it. It'll keep happening. And you know, like, and we were talking about death with multiple exits, but problems will set up, like, you're going to have a problem. It's going to happen no matter what
Yes.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't solve it, you ignore it and walk away, it's going to happen again.
And
we
likely
see
more
this,
amplified.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to overcome that fear. You gotta do the fear. There's a chapter. I'm going to send you a copy of Starmaker. You got to read it, because we're
Okay.
talking about it all the time and through this interview. The chapter 5 was a big thing. There was I got stuck on a cliff and I was going to die. And this is real. This is like not 20 and back stuff. This is like 2010, I think, 2011. I forget when exactly. And I was walking. Used to live on Maui. I lived on Maui, and every day I'm praying for those people that the fires recently. But I was living there, and I was having I was in Kahakaloa on the North Shore, and I was a property maintenance guy for property, and I was off work, and I went to go get a vehicle across the valley, and I was having a most pleasant afternoon. I was done working for the day, and it was a beautiful tropical sunny day. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon, and it was just wonderful. And in the matter of 2 minutes, I was in a life and death situation where I was hanging on the side of a cliff with no way to get off of it, and looking down at treetops below me and knowing that it was rocks. It was nothing but rock. I was going to die. I was going to be badly injured or die. And it was the let go thing. Like, I had to let go. I was hanging there, and it was just getting worse and worse, and I had to consciously let go. And whatever, you have to read it in the book, and I'm going to explain it real quick. That when I made the decision, like, there was a decision, and I said, okay. And instead of just letting go and dropping, I let go, and I did the Nestle plunge. I pushed off. I said, you know, okay, this is it. And I pushed off, and because I did that, I landed out where there were vines in a tree that saved me. I lived, and I landed, and I was quite comfortable, actually, how I landed. Because I had accepted it and let go purposely, rather than fight it to the end, I would have fell on rocks. But because I pushed off, I went out another 10, 12 feet, and I landed in very tall grass and vines from a tree it was like I was sitting in a chair when I landed. And what I'm saying is that changed my whole life. That moment changed.
That could have been one of your
everything
exit points.
Yeah, I could have. But what I'm saying is I accepted letting go.
Yes. Okay. Well, okay, that's really cool that you say that, because oftentimes in my dreams, when I'm going to, like, when I often have these dreams where I drive off a cliff. Like, I'm driving and it just somehow, like, I'm not purposely trying to drive, but it somehow lose control of the car. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to go right off the cliff. And I know in my dreams, this is what's so interesting. This was happening regularly earlier this year. Where in my dream, I'm like, well, okay, I guess this is where it ends. And the next thing I know, it's a soft landing and I'm not dead. And the car just keeps going somewhere else, or I just end up in a different area. But it's like, it's that surrender, like, well, okay, here we go. I guess this is how it's going to end. And it's that surrender, that letting go.
You dream that a lot. So I wonder, what's going on in your life at that point, like.
Oh, I know what was going
because
on.
this is a subconscious. Right.
Yeah, like I was facing something that truly I was really scared of, like the crash, but ultimately I had to surrender and just trust that everything's going to be fine.
Right. Yes. And well, whatever, I don't want to give away chunks of the book, but at the moment I heard a voice very loudly, and possibly the only time in my life I've ever heard a voice in my head like that. It was very loud when I was hanging there. Literally, I was like hanging, and the dirt was eroding, and I was holding a bush's roots, and the bush started coming loose. And I was bleeding. I had a machete that I was, whatever. I don't want to tell the whole thing, but ants started coming out. I'm going, how am I going to get? I was like, I thought in myself, I'm gonna effing die. There was no cell service there. I had been down there where I was about to fall, and there's no. So I said, I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna fall, and I looked down. And I mean, like they were tall trees, and I was above their tops, and I looked down. I couldn't see the bottom, and I thought, I'm gonna go down there, and I'm gonna break both my legs, and I'm gonna lay there, and no one's gonna know where I'm at, and I'm not gonna have any cell service, and I'm gonna be there for the next couple of days. That's what's going through. I went, oh my God, I'm gonna die. And I started getting desperate, and finally this loud inner voice that sounded like me. It said, don't you trust me? That was the voice that said, don't you trust me?
Oh.
Loud. And I went, and I thought, and I relaxed, and I said, I trust you. I'm gonna go. And I pushed off. And it was like literally, like I said, the Nestle plunge, like went back and fell into vines. It was weird. It was like jungle. Exactly. And I drove the rest of the way home going, what just happened?
Yeah.
I got out of there, and then I went home. I hiked my way out of the valley. I went home, and everybody I told was like not impressed. Everybody I told that I was like, you won't believe what just happened to me today. And I went home and told them, they were like, yeah, whatever. So, and everybody I've told since then. So I put it in the book. I made sure that it's in the book because it is significant. It's a significant event to know that your life, like it wasn't my time. Hunters know this. There are deer hunters that every shot they take at the deer should have got it, but it's just not that deer's time. And they're aware this is a phenomenon. Like it's not, when it's not your time, you're not going to go. When it's not, you get what I mean? Like so there are things that you're gonna consciously manifest, and there's things there are waypoints that you have. There are things that you have to experience, and your life won't let you go until you do it. Ugh.
I know. Wow. I feel like I'm short circuiting.
Me too. Yeah, I know. I cleaned up my spill. I got a little bit of a stain on my one of my copies here, my own copy.
Oh man, I hope it didn't go into the keyboard or anything like that.
We'll see. Am I making sounds? Can you hear that?
I can't.
On my end, I can hear my keyboard going boop when I touch it.
So. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where to go next?
Oh, the one thing I was curious to ask you is this idea of, like, obviously when we think about dark matter, right, which is everything that we can't really see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think its role is in this, and in its relationship to us in choosing our reality?
Wow. Well, I don't think that
if your brain wasn't short-circuited enough, I just wanted to go.
Well, we're getting into other things. So this is also covered in the Gateway document, or mentioned in it. That the universe is not really a big bang that's going out into all directions. It's actually more like a torrid. Am I saying that right? The donut. Torus. It's more of a donut. So we see the big bang that we're moving away from, but we haven't reached the top of the donut yet. And that our region of space-time and all the dark, everything will come around and go actually into a big collapse that is, billions of years from now. But that was the CIA Gateway document, and this was like in 1986, I think, when was the assessment, Gateway assessment, 84 or 86, and but they had a diagram of the universe that had it as a torrid. So we don't see, because of where we're oriented on a donut shape of time, time space.
Well, the same way we can't see the other side of the earth.
The same way, here we go, right? No, well, the earth is sphere, but the energetics of it are torrid as well.
Yes.
The magnetic sphere of it, the sun's magnetic sphere, like we see these things, the energetic patterns in nature repeat.
Yes.
On a micro to a macro level. And when you get up into the big macro objects, all things are formed into a disk or a ball. And macro objects are like a galaxy, are in an accretion disk. A star system that isn't formed yet is an accretion disk of dust with a star or a gravity well in the center. And then things begin to come into a ball, not a small disk. By the way, anybody listening that listens to flat earth stuff, because they do a really good job of selling it to you, because they leave out pertinent information and they just bombard you with this absurd stuff, like things like, what if, why couldn't I see I should see the curve of the earth 5 miles away, and the curve is hundreds of miles before you can see a few inches. Anybody that is entertaining that and has questions about flat earth, just join a astronomy club, get into local astronomy, buy a small telescope and start learning astronomy, because something called parallax in astronomy, you don't need $1 billion telescope, you don't need to be an astrophysicist. The parallax and the astronomy culture, the amateur astronomy culture, teaches you enough to not fall for any of the flat earth stuff. The astronomy solves it. So they just leave all that stuff out, because most people, you don't get taught it in school. You don't get an astronomy class in school. If you do, it's super basic. It's just pictures of Saturn, etc. You don't get a telescope in high school to look through. And so if you join an astronomy club and go and look through telescopes and see the things out there, and then they use parallax, like the same way that we could tell distance with 2 eyes, they can tell it with 2 telescopes. And so it's not a screen up there, and the stars are not moving around us at better than light speed in one direction. Like the physics are not possible. So it's just easier to have a globe.
As I heard one person say, eventually flat earthers will come full circle.
And like I said, these are people that are motivated by the fact that they know they've been lied to.
We've all had our fair share of ridiculous conspiracy theories that we've gone down. Like I know I've fell victim to some that I'm like, oh God, really, Nicole? Did you really fall victim to that one? Well, we've all been there.
They're a trap for people with open minds. People with closed minds are immune to these dead ends. They're immune to them because they don't believe anything other than what's in their immediate life. They're short-sighted. So people with open minds, you have to consider it. I did. I watched some of the videos in the very beginning, and I thought, the question, I was like, wait a minute, is it flat? And I actually did that. Then the more I thought about it for days, and I was like, there's no way. And then I did my own kind of little experiments about it, and I thought, I got mad. I'm upset with the flat earth thing, because they're lying to so well. They're so good at lying. It's like, don't get mad at the person that proves that it's round to you. Get mad at the person that's lying to you about it, because they're spending probably millions of dollars generating this disinformation to split the community up. All of the things, the flat earth and the simulation theory and simulation theory 2, and all of them have one thing in common. There's no space. Don't look up. Don't look up. It's flat, or it's a simulation. It's just a dead end. It's like a video game. You're in a video game. There's nothing up there to look at. Don't look up there. There's no aliens. We are not doing business with them up there. We are not, you know what I mean? Like, there is no secret space program. Don't look up. There's no aliens. It's all a hoax. And that's the reason that they're doing that. They want to hide and protect. They have a technical advantage by what they're doing. And as soon as the rest of us join them, they don't have the advantage anymore. So they're really pushing it. And I'm not the only whistleblower about the secret space program, that we have colonies throughout the solar system. I'm not the only guy. I thought by now there'd be a whole lot more than me, but it's not for everybody. I'll tell you, talking about it publicly came with a price. It's very, it really slammed a lot of doors for me, coming forward, and it does for other people. Other people have had it worse than me. So it's not for everybody. So I know that there are thousands of people, well over 2,000 people that have contacted me in the last 7 years that said they've been through the same thing, and I work with them. And just yesterday, I had a consult. But it's not for them to come forward. I mean, it's not going to happen. Not everybody's going to go forward with it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, no. And I literally was just having a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who had the most life-changing experience at 40 through an ayahuasca ceremony. And he's now about to turn 50. And he's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. He goes, because I love how my life is. And I'm just so scared that it's going to disrupt what I have in the stability. He goes, I can't afford that. And so it's interesting. And that's fair. I think that's a fair thing, unless you really deeply feel called to whatever changes you feel like you're meant to make or truths you're meant to face. You got to know that there's going to be a disruption, and you can't really know how that disruption is going to play out. I have to believe, though, that it's going to be for your highest good, because anytime you're following your truth, it's just, that doesn't mean it's not going to be painful in the process.
I thought about this. Man, where do I start with this one? It's a long story. At the end of my time in Ceres Colony Cavalier, at the end of this book, that I can see, there's my spill.
Oh,
It's okay. I got more of these, but
yeah.
At the end of it, when they were putting me back, they knew they had something called a chronovisor, or whatever they called it.
Yes.
But we know it on Earth as a chronovisor. Basically a machine that can look into the future and show them probabilities, probable outcomes. And they looked at it, they had to get it down to a threshold like under 26% or 28% that I wouldn't remember. They knew that I remembered. They looked into the future. In the process, when they were putting me back, they scanned my future to see what was going to happen, and they went, oh, he's going to remember. So they took me out of where I was and put me in an office with another ET that had a machinery, and he was like giving me more trauma-based hypnosis. And then he would plug me into the machine and see what my probable future was, if I was going to remember the experience or not. And then he would give me another treatment, like a hypnosis, like an industrial grade, and then put me back in the machine. But I could see what he was seeing, but in my head at the same time. I was plugged into it.
Yes.
And I was seeing the end of my life every time. So it was like
Did they know that you were seeing that?
Yeah, they put an implant that doesn't come on until the last 3 minutes of my life. So when you die, your life flashes in front. So think about this. If you put an implant and it records my whole life, right? It's a lot of data. It's a big hard drive it needs. But they put an implant that lays dormant until you're dying. The chemistry in your brain changes, and then your life flashes before you, and it recorded that. And it was a small amount of data, just the snippets of your life, that last, the Naj, the dream before death. It was recording that and playing it back to this ET at his desk on the moon. And he was going, oh, he remembered. Okay, so let's try this. And I was experiencing the whole shebang. I was going through the death. I was experiencing the death scene. Like I was experiencing it. I was plugged into the machine that he was looking. So as a result, I saw many different times of me. I kept dying, and I kept seeing it. And what happened was, I saw the lives that I had that were terrible. I didn't have my book out. I remember laying there. I remember dying and going, I wish I would have told everybody what I remembered.
Really?
And I wish I would have wrote the book. I didn't write the book. Oh my God. And then my life sucked. It was a shitty experience. Part of my language was a shitty experience. Then he did it again. And it was like, instead of me getting worse, I kept getting better and better. Every time he did it, he was bungling it. And then I remembered, thank God I wrote the book.
Oh, okay, pause right there. That's the effect of, like, he should have just let it be, because now he's undoing what it is. Right? What we were just talking about, like, 30
exactly what
ago.
happened. That's exactly what was happening. And I said, I remember the experience of, I'm glad I wrote the book. At least I wrote the book. I won, you bastards, and died. And then it was getting better. And they were like, whoa, cut this. And then they decided, and this is in the book, very end of the chapter. And he said, well, he's not going to remember, take him. And they were going to give me, like, basically they were going to cripple me and put me back in my bed. And I was going to wake up the next morning, like after a lobotomy, like being crippled. And they got me over to the surgery. A reptilian walked me across the hall to go check in for surgery, to be crippled so that I couldn't speak, or, like they were going to give to make sure. And they said, that my paperwork was missing, that my entire file was missing, that my captain had done that, told me. And they said, well, it doesn't matter if he remembers because he's not in the system. So he's just going to be a kook on, they were like, he's not in the system. Number one, we can't operate on him because he's not in the system. And number two, if he does remember and he's not in the system, it doesn't matter. Just put him back. And the reptilian looked at me and he goes, this is your lucky day. This is the luckiest day of your life right now. Come on. He's like, because I was dead to him, like we were friends.
That was the
Anyhow.
funny reptilian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember him.
Really. And they're people just like
Yeah.
us. They're not evil. We're not evil. They're not evil. We're not good. They're not good.
So
they're people.
Do you know then when you're going to die?
So I have saw a bunch of different versions. I saw most of the time in the end of my life, and I'm gonna call this out. So what if I die this weekend and I'm talking about this? Like there are different exit points. I don't feel that if I remember dying when I'm in my 70s, that necessarily means I'm gonna die in my 70s. We're on a different timeline right now. But
and
most
I
of the
believe
time,
that you can make certain choices later in life that can change things as well. Like
learn the lesson on what can go. Like I've really have accomplished a lot. Like I really feel like, and I hope everybody can feel this too, is that I feel like if I did die, meet my demise tomorrow, I would be okay. You know what I'm saying? Like I would lay there in those, like I said, you get 3 minutes basically, unless you get vaporized or something. You get 3 minutes or whatever. Some people get knocked out cold. I'm sure you at some point know you're dying, but most people I think are aware for 2 or 3 minutes that they have died, and so you're like conscious and dead at the same time for that minute. And I think in those few minutes, like if I died tomorrow, I could look back and go, I'm cool with that. I did it. I did it. I did it. That's right. So that's a big thing to say. Can you say that? And I feel that way. Now, who knows? But I know I didn't feel this way when I was in my 40s and my 30s and 40s. I know I did not. If I would have died, I would have had huge regrets. And so that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But most of the time in that situation, in that office, it was a corner office on a building on the surface of the backside of the moon. Most of the deaths that I saw, I had like something like a stroke. I was crippled for years before I died. I had a stroke or something. And so I was like living in a home. Like I had my own place, and a nurse would come in and see me and feed me and leave. And I was like crippled. I was like a stroke victim, and then died. So that was most of it. Sometimes I died in a car accident. Sometimes I was sick and died. So like I kept seeing different scenarios play out, but in most of them, I had lost cognitive. Like I had what do you call it? Like Alzheimer's or something.
Well, that's an interesting manifestation, considering everything that is. Like the fact that it's all about memory recall, Yeah,
we'll see how old age treats me. Most of the males in my family live pretty, in their 80s, and they're very healthy. So we'll see how it goes.
The way I see it is, like you said, we're all going to die. And you may have
canon event. It's a canon event.
You may have options of how that's going to happen. You may have a few different alterations, that you can make there. But if you could change the outcome of the job scenario, that if there's something coming down where you're like, I don't want this, and there's a possible alternate reality, you could do the same thing again.
You can extend it, but like I said, I think it's very important to be okay with dying.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because it's something I've thought about recently myself. And I'm like, what if I died today?
Would you be cool with it? Right.
Would I be good with my life?
Would you look back and and I've said this to people in other interview situations, and I say this to people all the time when you get into the deep conversations. I go, if you were going to die, right? If you dropped and you knew, oh God, I'm dead, and you're laying there and your life starts flashing before your eyes, you start reliving your life and looking back on it, and you've got a few minutes. If there's a part that you're going to regret, if something that you screwed up that is going to bother you in those last 3 minutes of your life, when you're seeing your whole life when you're dead, believe me, are the most important moments of your whole life, because it's your whole life. You're looking back on, you're going to relive all your highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something in that moment that's going to make you regret, you need to go fix it right now. That's your mission. You need to go fix that right this minute, and you need to work on that. You need to make all your decisions in your life based on how you're going to feel about that last 3 minutes of your life. So in like, here's my prime example. When I got my memories back of what I went through, I knew that I couldn't die and live with myself if I hadn't told anybody. If I was laying there dying and thought, oh my God, I wish I would have told everybody about my time on Ceres, that exists, that the ETs, that all that exists and it's real. Of all my time of working on a spaceship and other star systems, like Star Trek is real. I couldn't live with myself if I took that to the grave with me. That was my pride. That was my motivator for speaking about it. That was one instance. But like there's other things, like whatever it is you want to do. And I kind of live my life like that. Now,
I recently just published an episode called the Deathbed Gut Check with a guest, and
same thing. Sounds like the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing, and it's something that I also have been living my life by, but I didn't call it the Deathbed Gut Check, which is a really cool term. I personally think it's an amazing term.
Yeah, I want to steal that.
It's under the premise of, will I regret this if I don't do it? Or will I regret that? And it's this idea of like, yeah, you can do something and regret it, but it's usually what you don't do is what you regret.
Right.
And so at least you tried something. If it didn't work out, whatever. And that's how I've like kind of lived my life is, okay, what would I regret more? Like, what would be more painful to me to regret in my last breath, that I didn't do? And I think that if I've been really honest with myself, and there are things I would still love to do in this lifetime. There are still things I would love to experience, but at every moment of my life until this time, I feel like I've lived in a way that I can be really proud of, like I feel like I feel good about the choices I've made. And even though some things haven't worked out the way maybe I would have hoped for them to work out, I know that I did the things that I meant to do, even though maybe they didn't result in the things that I wanted them to.
So, right. Nothing ever works out the way you want.
Mm-hmm.
It always works out the way it should. But if you can feel like you made the right internal decisions about it. The other thing is we can't experience everything in one lifetime.
Yeah.
Right. Let's face it. You can't you can't spend a lifetime working for the circus and have a regular life too. And spend your lifetime, you know what I'm saying? Having access to the beach. You have to pick one or the other. You can't experience being a boy or a girl, or mom or a dad, or disadvantages. You can't experience being a scholar versus an athlete. You can't do it all in one life. And so what you don't do in this one, in those last few minutes of your life, you're going to yearn for, and that sets the tone for your next life. So as we suffer in this life, we're rewarded in the next. That's an Indian saying, an old Indian proverb. And by suffering, I mean, I wasn't good enough to be in the NBA. I was too short. So next life, I want to be a little taller. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a weird example, but it's kind of like that. It's like the things you can't do that you wanted to in this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it's a regret. It's just that you wasn't available. So if you really wanted it, something you wanted, then that'll set the tone for your next life. And that's why a lot of people are like, man, why do I got to be like this? It never ends. I'm always doing this. It's like, well, maybe you wanted this. Maybe it was something you couldn't do last time.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be rich and lazy.
And I feel like too, in this lifetime, you needed to complete the mission of speaking your truth and sharing what you needed to share, so that you can go on to the next lifetime and not have to repeat that whole, like, okay, am I going to have the courage to really share this thing that's kind of like really out there and crazy? And, it's probably going to disrupt a lot of my life, and, but it's the right thing to do. It's my lesson of believing in myself and believing in my truth, and, doing what's right for.
I think I got a lot off my chest. For me personally,
Yeah.
and I, like I said, everybody, I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way as I do. Like they live their life in a way that has a closure built in any minute. Oh, you hear all these stories that are so sad. Like we're going to talk about something sad here. You hear all these stories of people, kids that die, and but their last few weeks they go and tie it all up and say, "Going." You hear about people that go and say goodbye to somebody, or they, you know what I mean? Like there was a story of a kid. These people were talking to their parents. I forget where I saw it. It was on a TV show about reincarnation, I think. They said that their son was bullied at school, and he had like a condition, and he went to the bully's house, and the parents like, "What?" And he went to his house and he said, "Look, I forgive you, and I wish we could have been friends." And but they were like, "What? This is weird. Like nothing happened." And then he went home, and then he went and got a hold of his cousins, and he said, "Thanks for everything." And like he tied it all up, and then like a week later, he died. Like, so
You're not taking in that karma into the next
whoa,
lifetime.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
wow. And
Yeah.
when you think about that on a scale of all of us, um, it's pretty big.
No,
It's
that's
a pretty
huge.
that's thing like we are definitely not taught the real nature of our existence by the people that are in charge, because they're manipulating it for themselves to
Mhm.
go to incarnate into certain things. Like they're doing it on an industrial scale for them to have maintain control. So we are just kind of left to our own devices down here, and there are technologies around it. Like there's a lot of theory. There's a lot of good things that lead to some of the elites have their memories given back to them from their previous life. So they die, like the Dalai Lama is supposed to have his memories from his past life each time. Every time he incarnates, he goes and picks his toys out. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like he has his memories from his past life. That the elites in the world are living like that. Like they have their memories from their past life, and that's why they're so barbaric. We look at the things they're cannibalistic, practicing Satanists. They're not. They're paganists from thousands of years ago. They're living the same lifestyle they had back then, and
Mm.
it's repulsive to us because we're in the future, but they still have the same baggage from 20 lifetimes ago. So think about that. Like if you lived in the past and you saw all the barbarism that was a way of life, and then you had those memories and lived in today's world, you would not have any respect for the laws or you know what I mean, the same things that the same etiquette that we all abide by. And that may be something that why the elite are as disconnected from us as they
That's
are,
an
because they're
interesting
remembering
theory.
their lives. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of theory about it, but there's a lot of arrows that point in that direction, a
No,
lot of
it makes
testimonies.
sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of scary. I think that there's a value in forgetting,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So there's a value in starting over and saying, I'm letting go of not only that life, but all the baggage of it, all the bad stuff that happened to me, the bad habits that I had, and all the
mhm.
trauma that I carried with me is all gone. Like you're getting rid of that too. So I think, living a certain number of lives and having memories is great, but I think that the baggage accumulates and these people are crazy
It
after a
comes
while.
with a cost.
Hmm.
Like, all powers come with a cost, but like for instance, in many of my psilocybin journeys that I've been doing over the last year, um, I do go into this moment where I it's almost like I go into a union ceremony with a past version of myself. One was like a humpback whale. Then I had a black jaguar come in, and then one was like as a shaman. And I see these parts of me coming back. The shaman and the humpback whale, I know, were past life versions of me. The jaguar felt more of like a spirit, like I was bringing in this spirit wisdom. But like I felt like the reason why it was coming through is because I had finally gotten to the point in my life where now I can receive that wisdom or those knowings that are going to now be useful to me in this lifetime. But it wasn't important for me to have them before. And maybe having them before wouldn't have allowed me to go through the experiences I needed to go through to get to this point.
Right. So it's like it does, think about that too. So how many, the joy of learning is gone if you have all your past life memory, like
Yeah.
learning, finding out, like how boring would dating be if you had all the past life memories you wouldn't even bother with it until you were much older.
You know what it's like?
Right?
You know what it's like? You know, in a video game where like you can accumulate like tools and like fruit, and it gives you life force and like whatever, and you've got all these accumulation of things. It's almost like you get to a certain level and it's like, oh, now I can grab onto that like power tool or whatever. And it's almost, that's what I feel like happened. It's like I reached a certain level in my my journey that now allowed me to grab onto this tool, which would then enhance the next part of my journey. It's like a reward, so to speak.
It is like a video game. You can use a lot of the metaphor of video gaming when we're talking about what we're talking about, like the incarnation of life.
Yeah.
On and on and on. You can.
That's what it felt like.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it felt like that to me.
But be careful not to get sold on the simulation theory.
No, I don't believe in the whole simulation thing. But there's certainly some parallels in the way things kind of operate, like video games had to come from somewhere, and it's just knowing.
It's a telescope. It is kind of like a video game, what reality is, but you're stuck here the whole time. Your body is your body, your life is your life. Like there's always exceptions to many rules, but this is, for lack of a better term, very real. And what you do to other people is very real. Karmic debt is real.
Yes.
I believe that. Absolutely. I believe everything that gets stolen gets paid back.
Yeah. Well, Tony, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for.
Hell, I know that was a blink of an eye.
For sharing your time and energy with us. And that was so cool. I now really want to read your second book.
I think you'll get a lot of it. I think you'll like it. For you specifically. Like, I always plug the book. Of course, I would love to sell books, obviously. But it's not about that. For Ceres Cavalier is a testimony, and it's because they were deleting me. I did hundreds of interviews, and half of them just disappeared one day. And I went, oh God, that was a lot of work. And so we really doubled down and wrote the book. I couldn't have done it alone. I'm not that brilliant. People helped me, but it's my testimony. There's a lot of evidence behind it. Project Starmaker, like I said, it happens on page 252 of Ceres Cavalier. Project Starmaker happens between those two pages, 252 and 253. Okay. That was a lot of the spiritual stuff that we talked about today. And and it wasn't for everybody. I was scared when I put it out. I thought people were going to throw up tomatoes, but everybody's loved it so far. I've got a lot of great reviews about it, and it's a short book. It's not an equal, it's a sequel. So it covers a lot of those things that I think a lot of people, it might go over their head, but everybody listening, probably not. Well,
if they want to get your book, do they just head on over to your website?
TonyRodrigues.com. Links to both books on Amazon. They're on Amazon. Okay. Project Starmaker and Ceres Cavalier under my name. But my website has links to, we're going to it's not out yet. We're close. It might be as early as Tuesday of next week that we have the purple series that tells how to do we put together a teachable. We're going to package it, and it tells how to do the remote, what I did about the job when I got the job. It tells how to do that.
Okay. Well,
so it's called the purple series.
Once that's up, let me know, because this episode will come out in a couple weeks. So then I can put that link in the description below as well.
Well, it'll be on TonyRodrigues.com. It'll be popping in there. And then I have a memory course and other stuff in there too. So.
Awesome. Well, Tony, thanks so much for coming by. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's
Thanks
great to see you.
Thanks for melting my brain down.
Ditto.
And to my audience, I love you guys so much. I hope you had a great time. And of course, if you're new and you haven't checked out some of the episodes with Tony in the past, check out episode 123 and 124, and then jump to, I believe it's 179. You're in for a treat. And a lot of this will make sense if it didn't already. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.